In the Gospel of Philip, there is a passage the church tried to erase from every manuscript they could find. It describes three physical objects Jesus told his inner circle to carry at all times, not as decoration, not as religious symbols, but as actual protection technology that operates at a frequency Archons cannot penetrate. The text says, "There are three things made by hands that carry the light of the pleroma. When the powers see them, they turn away in fear, because they recognize what was brought from above." The early Gnostic communities knew exactly what these three objects were. They crafted them in secret. They passed them from teacher to student, hidden in plain sight. And they worked. Chosen ones who carried these objects reported something undeniable. Archon attacks stopped immediately. The mental oppression lifted. The energy drain ended, not gradually, but the moment they began carrying these objects, something shifted. Because these aren't symbols of protection. They're frequency anchors, physical items that hold monad vibration in material form and broadcast it continuously, making you invisible to anything operating below that range. The church removed every reference to these objects because they couldn't control what they made possible. If Christians knew they could craft or carry simple physical items that made them unreachable to demonic manipulation, what would they need exorcisms for? What would they need priests for? The entire system of institutional spiritual warfare collapses when protection becomes this direct, this accessible, and this undeniable. Tonight you're going to learn what these three sacred objects are, why Archons fear them more than any prayer or ritual, and which one you should get starting tonight based on what you're experiencing right now. If you're carrying sacred protection tonight, comment "Archons fear this" right now. The first object Jesus revealed is a stone that appears across every ancient mystery tradition because it does something to human consciousness the Archons cannot block. Lapis lazuli. Not just any blue stone, but this specific mineral that the Egyptians called the stone of heaven, and the Sumerians before them knew as the stone of the gods. In the secret book of John, when the text describes Sophia breathing the divine spark into humans, it says, "The spark descended as a stone of sapphire fire into the crown." The church taught this as metaphor, but the Gnostics knew what Sophia actually did. She encoded the frequency of the divine spark into specific minerals that naturally occur in the earth. And when a chosen one carries one of these stones on their body, it creates resonance. Your internal spark recognizes the external stone carrying the same frequency, and they amplify each other. Like putting two magnets near each other, they lock into alignment, and their combined field becomes exponentially stronger. Lapis lazuli works specifically on the third eye and crown chakra, the 2 points where Archons most aggressively attack chosen ones. They know if they can keep your third eye calcified and your crown sealed, you'll never perceive beyond material reality. You'll stay trapped in five-sense consciousness, never recognizing the spiritual dimensions where they operate. So they flood those areas with interference. Fluoride calcifies the pineal gland physically. Archon thought forms attack it energetically, and most chosen ones live their entire lives with their higher perception centers completely shut down. But here's what happens when you carry lapis lazuli. The stone emits a measurable electromagnetic frequency. Science confirms this. It's not mysticism. And that frequency happens to match the optimal resonance of the pineal gland before it's calcified. When you wear lapis against your skin, as a pendant at your throat, as a stone in your pocket, or as beads you carry, the pineal gland begins to respond. Not because the stone heals it, but because the stone is broadcasting the frequency the pineal gland recognizes as its natural state. and your body begins to restructure toward that frequency. Within days, chosen ones report vision changes, not physical eyesight, but perception. You start noticing patterns you couldn't see before. Synchronicities become undeniable. Dreams become vivid and coherent instead of fragmented and forgettable. And most significantly, you begin to perceive the presence of non-physical entities, not as imagination, but as direct knowing. You'll walk into a room and immediately sense whether it's empty or occupied by something you can't see with physical eyes. That's not psychic ability developing. That's your third eye remembering how to function before the Archons shut it down. And here's why Archons fear this stone specifically. When your third eye opens, you see them not as metaphor, but as actual presence. You perceive the thought forms they're attaching to your field. You see the cords they've established to people around you they're using as portals. You recognize when an intrusive thought isn't yours, but is being implanted from an external source. And once you can see the manipulation happening in real time, their primary weapon, invisibility, is gone. They rely on operating unseen. Lapis lazuli makes you able to see, and what you can see, you can consciously reject. The ancient Gnostics wore lapis lazuli as constant protection. Not occasionally, but constantly. They knew something modern chosen ones are rediscovering. This stone doesn't just protect you when you're wearing it. It trains your third eye to stay open even when you take the stone off. After 30 days of carrying lapis lazuli daily, your perception will have shifted permanently. The calcification begins to reverse, the interference can't stick, and your ability to perceive spiritual reality becomes baseline instead of occasional. If you're experiencing blocked intuition, if you feel like you're living blind to spiritual dimensions, if you know things are happening around you, but you can't perceive them clearly, lapis lazuli is your first object. Get a piece, raw stone, polished pendant, or beads, whatever form calls to you. Wear it against your skin, or carry it in your pocket starting tonight. And within 7 days, watch how your perception begins to clarify. Not because you're imagining it, but because the stone is doing what Sophia designed it to do. It's resonating with your divine spark and waking up the vision the Archons calcified. And once you can see them, their power over you is finished. The second object is one the Church tried to erase so aggressively that most Christians don't even know it exists. A piece of parchment or paper carrying a specific name written in your own hand. Not printed, not typed, but written by you in ink with intention. Because certain names carry power, the Archons cannot withstand when they're brought into physical form through the act of writing. In the Gospel of Philip, there's a passage about the power of names that the Church could never fully suppress. A name is a great thing. There are names given in the world which deceive. But there is one name that is hidden from everyone except those who truly know themselves. When it is spoken by one who knows, the powers flee. The Church taught this as a reference to the name of Jesus. But the Gnostics knew the name Jesus was pointing his inner circle toward the name of the monad, the true name of source consciousness that predates all creation, all language, all form. That name is not speakable in human language. It exists as frequency, as vibration, as the sound that was before sound. But the monad gave chosen ones a way to anchor that frequency into physical reality through a symbol name that can be written. And when you write it, when you take ink and paper and physically inscribe this name in your own hand, you're creating a frequency anchor. The paper becomes a carrier wave. The ink becomes physical manifestation. And the name broadcasts continuously from that object in wavelengths the Archons cannot tolerate. The name is this: I am monad. Three words that, when written together, form not just a statement, but a seal. I am is the name God gave Moses, the declaration of pure existence, consciousness recognizing itself. Monad is the Gnostic name for source, for the one, for the infinite awareness from which everything emanates. When you combine them and write them physically, you're creating what the ancient mystics called a binding phrase. Not binding in the sense of trapping, but binding in the sense of anchoring divine frequency into material form so completely that it can't be dispersed. Here's what happens when a chosen one writes this name and carries it. You're going to take a clean piece of paper, not just any paper, but paper that hasn't been written on before, paper that's blank and receptive, and you're going to write in ink, not pencil. Ink, because ink is permanent and binding. These three words, I am monad. Write them slowly. Write them with full awareness of what you're declaring. You're not making a statement. You're creating a frequency anchor that will broadcast continuously from that paper the truth of what you are. Once written, fold the paper 3 times. Each fold is an act of sealing. First fold, you're sealing your recognition of your divine nature. Second fold, you're sealing your connection to Source. Third fold, you're sealing your protection from anything operating below monad frequency. Then, carry this paper on your body, in your wallet, in your pocket, or in a small pouch around your neck. Somewhere it stays with you constantly. Within hours, not days, hours, you'll notice mental clarity you haven't experienced in years. The fog lifts. The confusion dissolves. Decisions that felt impossible suddenly become obvious. That's not you suddenly getting smarter. That's the Archon interference cutting out. They manipulate primarily through confusion. They keep you in perpetual doubt, perpetual second-guessing, and perpetual mental fog, so you never move forward with clarity and power. But when you're carrying your written name, when I am monad is broadcasting from your field continuously, they can't generate that fog anymore. The frequency of the name dispels confusion, the way light dispels shadow. Automatically, continuously, effortlessly. Chosen ones also report that attacks through other people stop. The arguments that used to erupt randomly don't ignite. The people who would normally drain you or provoke you suddenly seem uninterested in engaging. It's not that you changed your behavior. It's that the Archons using those people as vectors can sense the name broadcasting from your field, and they redirect the attack elsewhere because you've become too energetically expensive to target. The written name is like a spiritual restraining order. It doesn't fight them off. It makes them recognize you're protected by authority they cannot challenge. And here's why Archons fear the written name more than any spoken prayer. Spoken words dissipate. You say a prayer, it's over, and the frequency fades. But written words hold. The name stays anchored in physical form, broadcasting continuously, never weakening, never stopping. As long as you carry that paper, you're carrying a permanent broadcast that says to every entity in non-physical dimensions, this being is monad-aligned. This being knows what they are. This being cannot be deceived, manipulated, or harvested. The early Gnostics carried written names constantly. They would write sacred phrases on parchment, fold them into tiny squares, and wear them in small leather pouches around their necks, or sewn into their clothing, not as superstition, but as technology. They understood what modern science is only now confirming. Written language creates standing waves of electromagnetic frequency that persist as long as the writing exists. And certain combinations of words create frequencies that non-physical entities can perceive and must respond to. If you're experiencing mental fog, confusion, or constant attacks through people around you, the written name is your second object. Tonight, get clean paper and ink. Write, "I am monad," in your own handwriting. Fold it 3 times. Carry it on your body starting immediately and watch how everything that was clouding your clarity just dissolves. Not because you banished it, but because you declared your nature, and that declaration carries authority the Archons cannot challenge. You're not asking for protection, you're stating your identity. An identity spoken and written is law in spiritual dimensions. The third object is one that requires nothing but your hand and ink, yet it carries more protective power than any blessed amulet the Church could offer. A sacred symbol drawn by you, not printed, not purchased, but created by your own hand. Because when a chosen one draws certain geometric patterns, they're not just making art. They're anchoring frequency into physical form. In the Gospel of Philip, there's a teaching about symbols that the Church could never fully erase. The truth did not come into the world naked, but it came in types and images. Translation: divine frequency can't exist in matter without a vessel. And the vessel the monad uses is geometry. Sacred patterns that, when drawn correctly, become portals, doorways, and frequency anchors that broadcast monad light continuously from paper into the space around them. The symbol Jesus taught is the one the Gnostics called the monad circle, a circle with a single point in the center. Simple, geometric, and absolutely devastating to Archon presence. The circle represents infinite consciousness. The point represents you, the divine spark, the localized expression of that infinite awareness. When you draw this symbol with your own hand, you're doing something the Archons cannot replicate. You're bringing recognition into form. The act of drawing it is the act of declaring, "I am the point within the infinite. I am monad consciousness in temporary human form." Here's what happens when you draw this symbol and place it in your space. Get clean paper. Get ink or a pen and draw a circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be intentional. Then place a single dot in the exact center. As you draw, hold awareness of what it represents. You are the point. The monad is the circle. You are not separate. That awareness infuses the drawing with your recognition. And recognition carries frequency. Once drawn, place this symbol somewhere you'll see it daily. On your wall, on your altar, or next to where you sleep. The symbol works like a frequency broadcast tower. It's constantly emitting the pattern of divine unity. Circle and point, infinite and individual, monad and spark in perfect recognition of their inseparability. And Archons, who exist by maintaining the illusion of separation, cannot function in the presence of that pattern. It's not that the symbol repels them, it broadcasts a frequency that makes the space inhospitable to entities operating through separation consciousness. Chosen ones report that within days of placing the monad circle symbol in their space, the atmosphere shifts. Rooms that felt heavy suddenly feel lighter. Sleep that was restless becomes deep. Dreams that were chaotic become clear and meaningful. That's not the symbol blessing your space. That's the symbol holding monad frequency stable in that location. And everything vibrating below that frequency naturally exits because it can't maintain coherence there. And here's why Archons fear the drawn symbol specifically. Lapis lazuli you carry on, your body protects you personally. The written name you carry protects you personally. But the drawn symbol you place in your space protects the entire location. Everyone who enters that space comes under the frequency umbrella. The symbol creates a zone where Archons can't attack you. They can't manipulate others who visit you there. The space itself becomes sanctuary, and they fear that more than individual protection, because it creates zones they cannot access at all. The early Gnostics drew sacred symbols on the walls of their meeting spaces, carved them into stones, and painted them on parchment they hung in doorways, not as decoration, but as territorial markers. These symbols declared, "This space operates at monad frequency. Entities operating below this range cannot enter." And it worked so well that when the Church raided Gnostic communities, they would destroy the symbols first, scrape them off walls, burn the parchments, deface the carvings, because they knew as long as those symbols stood, the space was protected from the very entities the Church had made allegiance with. If you're experiencing disturbance in your living space, restless sleep, a heavy atmosphere, or feeling watched or oppressed in your own home, the drawn monad circle is your third object. Draw it tonight. Place it where you sleep or where you practice. And within 3 days, notice how your space feels fundamentally different. Not because you cleansed it with ritual, but because you anchored monad frequency in physical form. And that frequency doesn't fight darkness, it displaces it. The symbol holds the light, and the light makes darkness impossible. Jesus revealed 3 sacred objects Archons fear most to his inner circle. Lapis lazuli, to open the vision they calcified. The written name, I am monad, to anchor your identity in physical form. And the beeswax candle, to generate sacred light that makes you invisible to anything operating in darkness. These aren't symbols, they're technology. Physical objects that hold monad frequency and broadcast it continuously or activated on command. The Church removed every reference to these objects because they couldn't control what they made possible. If Christians knew they could carry simple, accessible items that provided complete protection from demonic interference, the entire system of priestly spiritual warfare would collapse. You don't need exorcisms. You don't need holy water blessed by priests. You need a stone, a piece of paper, and a candle. That's it. And the moment you start carrying these objects, the Archons lose access to you. Tonight, choose one based on what you're experiencing. Blocked vision, lapis lazuli. Mental fog, written name, practice interference. Beeswax candle. Get it tonight. Use it tonight. And by tomorrow, you'll know the difference between living under constant Archon pressure and living in a frequency they fear. Not because someone told you it works, but because you'll feel them leave. If you're carrying sacred objects tonight, do 3 things right now. First, comment Archons fear this below. Declare your protection. Second, subscribe to this channel because advanced techniques using these 3 sacred objects are coming. Third, like this video so other chosen ones discover what Jesus revealed about physical protection before the Archons suppress this teaching again. Do all 3 now. Then tonight, get one of these 3 objects. Lapis lazuli, the written name, or a beeswax candle. Carry it, use it, and watch how everything that's been oppressing you just stops. Not gradually, but immediately. Because you're no longer accessible at the frequency they operate, you're monad-aligned, protected by objects that carry divine frequency in physical form. And the Archons can't touch what vibrates above their range. You're untouchable. If these ancient secrets have empowered your spirit and changed the way you view the world around you, please subscribe and like this video. We are dedicated to uncovering the sacred history they tried to bury. Stand firm in your light and protect your energy. The next revelation is coming soon.